I never thought I would find myself in a place like this, but here I am, standing in the dimly lit gallery of an abandoned art museum. The air is thick with dust, and the faint smell of mildew clings to the walls. I had heard rumors about this place, whispers of a collector who had gone mad, driven by an insatiable desire to possess the most exquisite pieces of art. They said he would do anything to acquire them, even if it meant taking lives. But I was drawn here, not by fear, but by curiosity. As I stepped inside, the creaking floorboards echoed beneath my feet, a reminder that I was not alone. The walls were lined with empty frames, remnants of what once were masterpieces. I could almost feel the weight of the stories they held, the lives they had touched. My heart raced with excitement as I imagined the treasures that might still be hidden within these walls. I had come to document the forgotten, to capture the essence of what remained. I pulled out my camera, the lens glinting in the low light, and began to explore. Each room I entered told a different story, a different chapter of the collector's obsession. In one room, I found a shattered mirror, its fragments reflecting distorted images of myself. I leaned closer, captivated by the way the shards seemed to twist my features into something grotesque. It was as if the mirror was warning me, but I brushed off the feeling. I was here for the art, not the warnings. As I moved deeper into the museum, I stumbled upon a locked door. It was slightly ajar, and a chill ran down my spine as I pushed it open. The room inside was dark, but I could make out the outlines of canvases draped in white sheets. My heart raced with anticipation. What could be hidden beneath those covers? I stepped inside, the door creaking ominously behind me. I reached for the nearest sheet, my fingers trembling with excitement. As I pulled it away, I was met with a painting that took my breath away. It was a hauntingly beautiful portrait of a woman, her eyes filled with sorrow and longing. But as I stared deeper, I felt an unsettling sensation wash over me. The woman's gaze seemed to follow me, her expression shifting from sadness to something darker, more sinister. I shook my head, trying to dispel the feeling, but it lingered like a shadow. Suddenly, I heard a noise, a soft rustling coming from the corner of the room. My heart pounded in my chest as I turned to face the sound. There, in the dim light, I saw a figure hunched over, their back to me. Panic surged through me, but curiosity held me in place. Who could it be? A fellow explorer? Or something far more dangerous? I took a cautious step forward, my breath hitching in my throat. "Hello," I called out, my voice barely above a whisper. The figure didn't move. I took another step, and the floor creaked beneath me, breaking the silence. The figure turned slowly, and I was met with a face that sent chills down my spine. It was gaunt, hollow-eyed, and twisted in a way that made it hard to believe it was human. "Why are you here?" the figure rasped, their voice a low, gravelly whisper that echoed in the empty room. I opened my mouth to respond, but no words came out. Instead, I felt a wave of dread wash over me. This was no ordinary person, this was someone who had been consumed by the collector's madness. "I'm just exploring," I finally managed to say, my voice trembling. The figure's lips curled into a smile that didn't reach their eyes. "Exploring? Or collecting?" they asked, their gaze piercing through me. I took a step back, my instincts screaming at me to run, but I was rooted to the spot. "Art is a reflection of the soul," the figure continued, their voice dripping with a twisted sense of reverence. "And some souls are worth more than others." I felt a chill run down my spine as I realized the implications of their words. This was not just a museum, it was a graveyard of lost souls, each piece of art a testament to the lives that had been taken to satisfy the collector's insatiable hunger. I turned to leave, but the figure stepped closer, blocking my path. "You can't leave," they said, their voice low and menacing. "Not until you understand." I felt a surge of panic as I realized I was trapped, caught in a web of madness that I had unwittingly stumbled into. The walls seemed to close. I felt the weight of the figure's gaze pressing down on me, a palpable force that made it hard to breathe. The room, once filled with the promise of discovery, now felt like a trap, the air thick with tension. I glanced around, searching for an escape, but the door I had entered through seemed to fade into the shadows, as if the museum itself was conspiring to keep me inside. "Understand what?" I managed to stammer, my voice barely above a whisper. The figure took a step closer, their features becoming clearer in the dim light. I could see the deep lines etched into their skin, the hollow cheeks that suggested a life spent in darkness. "Understand the price of beauty," they replied, their voice a chilling melody that sent shivers down my spine. I took another step back, my heart racing. "I don't want any part of this," I said, my voice shaking. "I just came to explore." The figure laughed, a sound that echoed eerily in the empty room. "You think you can just walk in and out of here? This place is a sanctuary for the lost, a gallery of souls that have been claimed by the collector. You're already part of it." I felt a surge of panic as I realized the truth in their words. The portraits, the empty frames, they were not just remnants of the past, they were a testament to the collector's insatiable greed. Each piece of art was a life, a story cut short to satisfy a twisted obsession. I had come seeking beauty, but I had stumbled into a nightmare. "Please, let me go," I pleaded, my voice breaking. The figure's expression softened for a moment, a flicker of something human crossing their face. "You don't understand," they said, their tone shifting. "The collector is always watching. He knows when someone enters his domain, and he doesn't take kindly to intruders." I felt a chill run down my spine at the mention of the collector. "What do you mean?" I asked, my curiosity battling with my fear. The figure leaned closer, their breath cold against my skin. "He collects more than just art. He collects people, those who dare to trespass. You must leave before it's too late." Before I could respond, a loud crash echoed through the museum, reverberating off the walls like a thunderclap. The figure's eyes widened in terror, and they turned to look toward the source of the sound. "He's here," they whispered, their voice trembling. "We have to hide." Without thinking, I followed the figure as they darted toward a nearby closet, its door slightly ajar. I squeezed inside just as the door swung open, revealing a tall, shadowy figure standing in the doorway. The collector. He was draped in a long, dark coat, his face obscured by a wide-brimmed hat that cast a shadow over his features. I could feel the darkness radiating from him, a palpable aura of menace that made my skin crawl. "Who's there?" he called out, his voice deep and commanding. I held my breath, my heart pounding in my chest as I pressed myself against the back of the closet. The figure beside me trembled, their eyes wide with fear. I could see the collector's silhouette moving through the room, searching, hunting. Come out, wherever you are," he taunted, his voice dripping with malice. "I can smell your fear. It's intoxicating." I felt a wave of nausea wash over me as I realized the true nature of this man. He was not just a collector of art, he was a predator, and I was his prey. The figure beside me whispered urgently, "We have to wait. He'll leave soon." I nodded, my mind racing as I tried to think of a way out. The collector continued to search, his footsteps echoing ominously as he moved closer to our hiding place. I could hear him muttering to himself, a low, sinister chant that sent chills down my spine. Suddenly, he stopped, and I felt my heart drop. "I know you're in here," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "You can't hide from me." I exchanged a terrified glance with the figure beside me, and we both held our breath, praying he wouldn't find us. After what felt like an eternity, the collector turned and walked away, his footsteps fading into the distance. I let out a shaky breath, relief flooding through me. But the figure beside me remained tense, their eyes darting nervously. "We can't stay here," they whispered. "He'll come back." I nodded, my mind racing. "What do we do?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. The figure hesitated, their expression shifting from fear to determination. "We have to find a way out. There's a back exit, but it is guarded. If we can make it there without being seen, we might have a chance." I felt a surge of hope mixed with dread. The thought of escaping this nightmare was tantalizing, but the reality of the collector's presence loomed over us like a dark cloud. "Lead the way," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. The figure nodded, and we slowly opened the closet door, peering out into the dimly lit room. The coast seemed clear, but I could still feel the tension in the air, a palpable reminder of the danger that lurked just beyond our sight. We stepped out cautiously, moving as quietly as possible. The figure led me through the maze of empty frames and forgotten art, their movements fluid and practiced, as if they had navigated this place many times before. As we crept through the gallery, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. The portraits on the walls seemed to come alive, their painted eyes following our every move. I glanced at the haunting woman from earlier, her sorrowful gaze now tinged with something more sinister. I shivered, pushing the thought aside. I had to focus on escaping. We reached a narrow hallway that led to the back of the museum. The figure paused, glancing back at me with a look of urgency. This is it. The exit is just ahead, but we need to be quick. I nodded, my heart racing as we moved forward. The hallway was lined with more covered canvases, and I could feel the weight of the collector's presence growing stronger with each step. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from the main gallery, followed by the sound of shuffling footsteps. My blood ran cold. He's coming. I hissed, panic rising in my chest. The figure grabbed my arm, pulling me toward a door at the end of the hallway. Now, they urged, and we burst through the door just as the footsteps grew louder. We found ourselves in a small storage room filled with old crates and forgotten artifacts. The air was thick with dust, and the dim light barely illuminated the space. I could hear the collector's voice echoing from the gallery, his tone low and menacing. You can't hide from me. I will find you. The figure and I exchanged terrified glances. We have to find a way to barricade the door, they whispered urgently. I nodded, and we quickly began to push crates against the door, our hearts racing as we worked. The sound of the collector's footsteps grew closer, and I could feel the adrenaline coursing through my veins. Just as we finished barricading the door, I heard the collector's voice again, this time closer. You think you can escape? You're part of my collection now. I felt a chill run down my spine at his words. The thought of being trapped here, becoming another piece of his twisted gallery, was unbearable. The figure turned to me, their eyes wide with fear. We need to find another way out. There's a window in the back of this room, but it's high up. We'll have to climb. I nodded, my mind racing as I scanned the room for something to help us reach the window. I spotted a stack of crates in the corner, and we quickly moved to them, climbing on top of each other to reach the window. My heart raced as I felt the weight of the collector's presence growing stronger, the air thick with tension. I could hear him moving through the museum, searching for us, and I knew we had to hurry. Finally, I reached the window, my fingers grasping the ledge as I pulled myself up. I glanced back at the figure, who was still climbing. Come on. I urged, my voice a frantic whisper. They scrambled up, and together we pushed against the window, forcing it open with a loud creak. The night air rushed in, cool and refreshing, but it was also filled with the sounds of the collector's footsteps growing closer. Hurry! I urged, and the figure climbed through the window first, their body disappearing into the darkness outside. I followed quickly, my heart pounding as I dropped down onto the ground below. We landed in a small courtyard, surrounded by the crumbling walls of the museum. The moonlight illuminated the space, casting eerie shadows that danced around us. I looked around, searching for a way to escape, but the courtyard was enclosed, with high walls on all sides. Over there, the figure shouted, pointing to a gap in the wall where the bricks had crumbled away. We rushed toward it, our hearts racing as we heard the collector's voice echoing from inside the museum. You can't escape. You're mine. I felt a surge of panic as we reached the gap. We have to go now. I urged, and we squeezed through the narrow opening, scraping our arms against the rough edges of the crumbling bricks. I could hear the collector's footsteps echoing behind us, a relentless reminder that we were still being hunted. The night air was cool against my skin, but the fear coursing through my veins made me feel hot and clammy. We emerged on the other side of the wall, stumbling into a narrow alleyway that ran alongside the museum. The street was deserted, the only sound the distant hum of the city beyond. I glanced back at the museum, its dark silhouette looming ominously against the night sky. We need to keep moving, I said, my voice urgent. He'll find us if we stay here. The figure nodded, their expression a mix of fear and determination. There's a park a few blocks away. We can hide there until we figure out what to do. We took off down the alley, our footsteps echoing in the stillness. I could feel the adrenaline pumping through my body, urging me to run faster, to escape the nightmare that had ensnared us. As we turned the corner, I caught a glimpse of the museum's back entrance. The door swung open, and the collector stepped out, his silhouette framed by the dim light spilling from the building. My heart dropped as I realized he was searching for us, his eyes scanning the darkness with a predatory intensity. You can't hide forever, he called out, his voice echoing through the night. We ducked into the shadows, pressing ourselves against the cold brick wall of a nearby building. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, each beat a reminder of the danger that lurked just a few feet away. The collector's footsteps grew closer, and I held my breath, praying he wouldn't find us. "Where are you?" he called out, his voice dripping with malice. "You think you can escape my collection? You're already part of it." I felt a chill run down my spine at his words. The thought of becoming another piece of his twisted gallery was unbearable. The figure beside me trembled, their eyes wide with fear. "We have to move," they whispered urgently. "He's getting closer." I nodded, my mind racing as I tried to think of a way out. "Let's head toward the park," I suggested, my voice barely above a whisper. We slipped out of the alley and into the street, moving quickly but quietly. The park was just a few blocks away, and I could see the faint glow of streetlights illuminating the path ahead. We hurried toward it, our hearts racing as we glanced back to see if the collector was following. As we reached the entrance to the park, I felt a surge of hope. The trees loomed overhead, their branches swaying gently in the night breeze. "We can hide in there," I said, pointing toward the dense foliage. The figure nodded, and we dashed into the park, the sounds of the city fading behind us. Once inside, we found a secluded spot behind a large oak tree, its trunk wide enough to shield us from view. We crouched down, our breaths coming in quick gasps as we listened for any sign of the collector. The park was eerily quiet, the only sound the rustling of leaves in the wind. "Do you think we lost him?" I asked, my voice trembling. The figure shook their head, their expression grim. "He's relentless. He won't stop until he finds us." I felt a wave of despair wash over me. How could we escape someone so determined, so twisted? We sat in silence, the weight of our situation pressing down on us. I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched, that the collector was somehow still close by. "What does he want with us?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. The figure looked at me, their eyes filled with a mixture of fear and understanding. "He wants to add us to his collection," they replied, their voice shaking. "He believes that every life has a story, and he wants to own those stories. To possess them." I felt a chill run down my spine at their words. The collector was not just a murderer, he was a thief of lives, a man who believed he could own the very essence of others. Suddenly, a rustling sound broke the silence, and I felt my heart leap into my throat. The figure and I exchanged terrified glances, our eyes wide with fear. "What was that?" I whispered, my voice trembling. The rustling grew louder, and I could see shadows moving among the trees. "Stay quiet," the figure urged, their voice barely audible. We pressed ourselves against the tree, holding our breath as we listened. The shadows moved closer, and I could see a figure emerging from the darkness. My heart raced as I realized it was the collector, his silhouette cutting through the night like a predator stalking its prey. "There you are," he called out, his voice smooth and taunting. "I knew you couldn't resist the allure of my collection." The words dripped with a sinister satisfaction, and I felt a wave of dread wash over me. He was toying with us, relishing the hunt, and I could see the glint of something sharp in his hand, a knife, perhaps, or a tool of his twisted trade. The figure beside me trembled, their eyes wide with terror. "We have to move," they whispered urgently. "If he gets too close, we won't stand a chance." I nodded, my mind racing as I tried to think of a way out. The park was vast, but the trees felt like a cage, closing in around us. "Run!" I suddenly shouted, adrenaline surging through me. Without waiting for a response, I bolted from our hiding spot, darting deeper into the park. The sound of footsteps followed closely behind, the collector's laughter echoing through the trees. "You think you can escape? You're only prolonging the inevitable." I could hear the figure behind me, their breath coming in ragged gasps as we weaved through the trees. The moonlight filtered through the branches, casting eerie shadows that danced around us. I glanced back, catching a glimpse of the collector, his face twisted in a manic grin as he pursued us with relentless determination. "Over there!" I shouted, pointing toward a cluster of bushes that seemed denser than the rest. We veered off the path, plunging into the underbrush, hoping to lose him in the thick foliage. The branches scratched at my skin, but I pushed through, my heart pounding in my chest. We stumbled into a small clearing, and I quickly turned to face the figure. "We can't keep running forever. We need a plan," I said, my voice urgent. The figure nodded, their eyes darting around as if searching for an escape route. "There's a small pond nearby. If we can reach it, we might be able to hide under the water." I felt a flicker of hope at the idea. "Let's go." I urged, and we took off again, moving as quickly as we could. The sound of the collector's footsteps grew fainter, but I knew he wouldn't give up easily. He was a predator, and we were his prey. As we reached the pond, I could see the water glistening under the moonlight. "We have to get in," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. The figure nodded, and we waded into the cool water, submerging ourselves as best as we could. The water was refreshing, but the fear of being discovered kept my heart racing. We held our breath, our bodies submerged as we listened for any sign of the collector. The world above us felt distant, the sounds of the night muffled by the water. I could feel the figure beside me trembling, their fear palpable. I wanted to reach out and reassure them, but I knew we had to remain silent. Minutes passed, and the tension in the air was suffocating. I could feel my lungs burning, the need for air becoming unbearable. Just as I was about to surface, I heard a rustling sound from the edge of the pond. My heart dropped as I realized the collector was close. "Where are you hiding?" he called out, his voice echoing through the night. "You can't escape me. I will find you." I felt a surge of panic as I held my breath, my heart racing. The water felt like a prison, and I could sense the figure beside me struggling to remain calm. Suddenly, the collector's shadow loomed over the pond, and I felt a wave of dread wash over me. "I know you're in there," he taunted, his voice dripping with malice. "You think you can hide from me? I can smell your fear." I felt the figure beside me begin to tremble, and I reached out, squeezing their hand in a silent gesture of support. We had to stay strong, to hold on just a little longer. The collector moved closer, peering into the water, his eyes scanning the surface. Come out, wherever you are," he sang mockingly, his voice a chilling melody that sent shivers down my spine. I could feel the panic rising within me, the urge to bolt to the surface overwhelming. But I knew that if we did, it would be the end. Just then, a loud splash echoed through the night, and I turned to see a figure emerging from the trees on the opposite side of the pond. It was another person, a stranger, who seemed to have stumbled upon the scene. "What's going on?" they shouted, their voice cutting through the tension. The collector turned, his expression shifting from amusement to rage.